How do you know when you're actually writing a book instead of in the mental process of thinking about the book you're going to write someday? When you're actually in the writing process as opposed to engaged in the mental process of, what's my book going to be about? Who's it going to be for? What are the chapters going to be in terms of the planning stages? When you're actually in the writing process, you have crossed over an important threshold between the planning and the sort of conjecture, the thought about the book to the actual writing. And that threshold you're crossing is accessing the emotion, accessing the strategy, accessing the story, accessing the content, and recreating it as you write. Indeed, either reliving it if you're sharing a story and highlighting the most emotional high points, low points as well, especially, and the through line that takes you to the end, or whether it's the strategy, reliving and sharing in context of how you used this strategy, how other people have used this strategy, what research and statistics back up this strategy. That's the kind of composite thought process you're in the writing stage, which again is very different than the mental stage of thinking about writing your book, which again is what separates the 70-some% of people that want to write a book or have thought of writing a book or believe writing a book would be a good idea, and the less than 1% that actually do. So why is that? It's because it's kind of difficult to make that bridge. It's easier in a sense to plan, to think about, to research, to ask friends, to do a study group, than it is to actually sit down and say, well, what story, what strategy, what aspect of my life experience would really benefit somebody else? And so therein lies the distinction. When you're in writing mode, you should be an open channel of giving. You should be an open channel of communication. Instead of sitting on the sidelines, you're actually running down the field towards the goal line, to use a sports analogy. In other words, it's blocking out everything else and focusing only on how to best convey that which you're writing about at the time. And if that becomes the practice, then it becomes cumulative. And as it becomes cumulative, your subconscious is working, even when you're not writing, thinking about what you've written, thinking about what you've already said, and indeed mentally planning for what you'll write when you sit back down again. So being in the writing process and being in flow consistently and building momentum in the writing process, it's about crossing that threshold of planning, logical, rational, foresight, future orientation, past orientation, and focusing into present orientation with all other distractions aside, so that you put down in the best form you can whatever it is that's the writing topic of the day. And as you build momentum, you know naturally what that is. Of course, if you're working from an outline, then you can naturally bounce around and pick a topic or pick a section of your book to write on. But ultimately, after you cross that threshold a couple of times and get into the writing process in earnest, everything starts to open up. Writing a book becomes fun instead of this huge 800-pound gorilla in the room type of situation. And ultimately, you produce something that both you're happy with, which is great, but more importantly, that really helps or entertains or inspires or educates anybody who reads it in the very best way possible. So hope that's helpful in terms of how to think about getting in the writing process, staying in it, building momentum in it, and what to focus on when you're there. Happy writing. If this is helpful, share it with somebody else who's writing a book and leave me a comment below. Look forward to hearing from you.